a robotic arm maybe can go through a hole and pull out a wire, while a person can't. Maybe there's a wire that's short, right? If someone touches it by hand, they might get electrocuted. But a robot, maybe you can have like something else at the end of it that can pull it out. So there are like different ways you can use it. I have used it personally for a robotic winding process, where I had a geometry, had a winding machine, and the robotic arm would move. So what I would create is different winding designs, right? And I would use a robot to design the winding pattern by controlling its speed and its rotation.
Let's start with the point about IAAC. We went to IAAC and we had this great exposure. We understood computational design to robotic fabrication to materials to whatnot. I think we have done manual labor, we have sketched, we have done everything. I think I've learned architecture in IAAC more than whatever I've learned in India, like at all. Personally, I can quote that. How was the whole journey for you there?
I think my journey in IAC was a bit different. I worked with one of my friend called Anton, right? Excellent computational design. I think he's one of the best I know, right? When I work with him, I'm very well aware that I'm not as good as him. But there's so much learning that I have from him. So it's about just knowing how much you can grasp from different people. And there's not just students, right? Even the tutors, the professors, they have so much to give. And they're always ready for a conversation, right? Over a cup of coffee, or in Spain, you can go for a beer, hopefully close to IAC, right? And that's what kind of gives you a bit more exposure. And it's really important to get that exposure, right? And when you get that exposure, you also know what else is there beyond just doing conventional architecture. Because there's so much to do. You just don't have to get the skills that you have and be stuck to one industry. You can widen the horizon and move to different paths. So that's what I've kind of taken back from IAC.
Right. It's also the tutors are very friendly. It doesn't feel like you're going and talking to your tutor. They'll sit with you. They'll guide you through it. They also like to research. So you might be like sitting together and researching about something, right? It's always to get to a point. I think everybody wants to grow is the aim and like to solve a problem. And it's so much like a team effort. Like the whole college comes together and is helping each other out on like only the time where you have to book a slot is where everybody's gonna fight and not let you win. But otherwise,
Those have been
everyone.
some tough times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next thing which we can break down right now is what exactly is computational design, the term itself. If you can talk about it a little bit.
Sure. I think computational design is an approach and a method of design, right? So it's using computer algorithms, using data to analyze and optimize and iterate designs. So this is more or less what computational design is. And the tools that I've been using constantly is Grasshopper, which is a plugin for Rhino. Right? It has several plugins inside, which you can use for different purposes.
Right.
So you can optimize geometry, you can do weather analysis, you can do physics simulations, you can do iterative design, you can do optimized designs, you can create entire catalog of iterations using solvers. Right? So this is more or less what computational design to me is.
Yeah. Just to be clear over here, because a lot of people like, and I'm going to be very, like, I'm not going to go at an advanced level and talk about anything. But I've met people and they'll ask me a question, okay, so how many facades do you have in the Grasshopper? It doesn't work like that. It's not a library. It's a tool through which you can create designs. Right? And that's very important to be aware of. And it's as simple as AutoCAD, like how AutoCAD is a tool, and you need to get on it and create something on it. Doesn't just give you random things. All of this, what you spoke about, needs to be created from scratch. Or like simulations need to be done. You need to understand how an algorithm works, and then you work towards it to make something out
I
of
think
it.
the best way to is give an example, right? For example, how do you build a wall? Like in SketchUp, how you build a wall is make a rectangle and extrude it.
Right.
Right. But if I were to make a wall on Grasshopper, I would break down what a wall is.
Hmm.
A wall is a vertical extrusion, but then it has bricks,
Correct.
right? Then break down a brick. A
Right.
brick is what? A rectangle with an extrusion,
Hmm.
right? What's a rectangle? It's a 4-point geometry.
Yeah.
So now when I build this in Grasshopper, I would make the first rectangle, give the height of the brick,
Yeah.
and then array it in different directions.
Correct.
Right? And then multiply it in z direction.
Correct.
Now I have a wall.
Hmm.
But that can be done even in any other software.
Yeah.
Now, the entire reason why I would use Grasshopper is if I make a change to the size of the brick, everything automatically gets adapted,
Correct.
right? And this is the powerful part because
Right.
I don't have to remodel everything again.
Right.
It saves my time. I can do as many iterations as I want. I can make changes in the way the wall looks. Maybe I want all the bricks to start rotating after a point and then come back,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And this, if I can control this, I have all the iterations that I can generate for the client.
Right.
And then it's a faster way to design.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it still sounds simple when we are talking about wall. The moment we start adding these parameters, as you're saying, the height, the length, the breadth, the connectors, and like n number of details, it becomes so much complex to break down the details of like how to make anything on site. But it's so much more simpler once you have everything figured out in Grasshopper, right? And it automates and streamlines your process. The other thing is now when we're talking about making these bricks and like the connectors and stuff, there's something called robotic fabrication also
Yeah.
in play, right? What is that?
Now, robotic fabrication, the way I would see it is using a 6-axis robot. It's a robotic arm, right? It has 6 degrees of freedom. So it could do the things that you want. For example, now let's say at the end of the robot, which is the end effector, you can have a pick and play. So it just picks and moves it and places it, right? Now, if you're in an automated warehouse, if you need to pick a package and put it in another tray, you would use this robot,
Right.
right? Now, if you have bricks and you want to move this brick from one point to the other, you can pick this brick and move it elsewhere.
Right.
Or you can even place it in the way you want for building the wall, right? Then if you put a 3D printer at the end of it, an extruder,
Yeah.
let's say it's a plastic extruder or a clay extruder,
Hmm.
then you can print any way. And then let's say if you want to use a sheet metal and you want to cut it in a specific way, you can just use the robotic arm, create a path,
Right.
and then give the material and its constraints, and then it'll help you do it.
Right.
So it's about kind of removing the repetitive task, whereas the robot will act with 100% precision, right?
Right.
Maybe a bit here and there can be adjusted, but you know that if you want to repeat a process for the next 1000 times, it's better to have the robotic arm do it rather than a person, because a person will create error
Right.
at some point, right? Even though if he's the best of the skilled worker there is. And you could also reach to places that are harder to reach. A robotic arm maybe can go through a hole and pull out a wire,
Yeah.
while a person can't.
Right.
Maybe there's a wire that's short, right?
Yeah.
If someone touches it by hand, they might get electrocuted. But a robot, maybe you can have like something else at the end of it that can pull it out.
Right.
So there are like different ways you can use it. I have used it personally for a robotic winding process where I had a geometry, I had a winding machine, and the robotic arm would move. So what I would create is different winding designs, right? And I would use a robot to design the winding pattern by controlling its speed and its rotation.
Now, all of this sounds very complex in terms of when we were studying architecture, right? Like, I would never think of me and you sitting here and talking about robots are going to weave something like this. And why is it even useful,
Yeah.
right? And like, why Grasshopper? Why should you automate anything in designing also? I just need to extrude and that's it. So, how did that shift happen? Or like, did you, like, now that you've already done it, do you think it was important? Because a lot of people are getting into like computation or are curious about it, but they don't really know what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like they're telling, okay, Grasshopper, I'll do something parametric and cool looking stuff. There's so much more to it, what we have explored in terms of you can build softwares, you can create, automated systems, and there's so much more. What do you think about all of this?
I think for me, at least the way I got into Grasshopper, so there are two parts to this. One is how I got into Grasshopper, and one is or computational design, and one is how everybody else kind of sees it, right? So I'll answer the second part first. It's about looking at a fancy shape, like something here, right? And be like, oh yeah, this is so cool. Let me do it, and I'll be able to like sell this skill. Because it's like the new kid on the block, right? But this kid has been on the block for a while. And right now the new kid on the block is AI with computational design. It's same like what happened with Midjourney, right? If people start creating these amazing images, everyone's like, I need to know this,
Right.
so that I can talk about it and flex on this,
Yeah.
right? So I think people get into it by looking at these complex shapes and geometries. That in a way is nice. Then once they get into it, then they understand that the complex shape just didn't generate itself. There was so much logic that went behind it. Then they start breaking it down, and that's when you start changing the way you approach design. Right? Even if you have to make a twisting tower, how do you make a twisting tower?
Correct.
You know, you have to twist every single plate, right? You control the rotation, control everything. So that's how you do it. And how I got into it is, I think it was in my fourth year undergrad, and we had to do a thesis, right? And I was big into sports, and I wanted to design like a sports center in India, right? First of its kind, with high altitude training, with all the best equipments. And that time, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics were announced.
Oh, nice.
So we knew the new sports that were being added to the Olympics, right? Like skateboarding, wall climbing, karate. And because these sports didn't have that facility, I'm like, okay, this could be a good challenge, and I could design something like this. The form, at that moment, I was really into Zaha Hadid. I was completely into it, right? And I wasn't very proficient in SketchUp to be able to design forms like that. And then I looked at different softwares, right? What could be the software that I could start working with? I saw Rhino, and I started modeling in Rhino. Rhino had sub-D modeling or T-splines back then. So I started playing with that. Once I started playing with that, then I'm like, okay, I can do this. But no one in my university knew about Rhino. When I went to my teachers, they're like, what software are you using? I said Rhino. They're like, what is this? Stop using it. Right?
Really?
Yeah. Because they said, you don't need to do this. Just do the basic.
Yeah.
You know, don't try to do this. I'm like, no, I want to do this. You know, this is my interest. And if you want to even apply to Zahadi, you can't have a regular portfolio.
Correct.
You need to match their style,
Yeah.
right? And I really wanted to work with them. And I think most of the students have that dream at some point to work with a very big architect, right? For me, that was Zaha. So when I started trying to break that down even more, then I explored Grasshopper. Then I think I did this Mobius geometry, which is like the first thing which everybody does. Like in SketchUp, you do a donut. I think in Grasshopper, you do a Mobius geometry. Just that twisted Mobius geometry. I tried to do that. I showed it to like few people around me. They're like, what is this? How is this a building? How are people going to enter?
Yeah.
I think the questions were very redundant because it's about understanding the power of the tool and what you can do.
Correct.
Rather than just saying, where is the entrance? Where's the windows? Where's the ventilation? Where's the flow slab?
Correct.
So once you start breaking that off, then I realized, okay, I need to do more workshops. So I started getting into Rhino, Grasshopper workshops. I did physical computing workshops with Arduino,
wow.
even before going to IAAC.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah. Then I found IAAC summer school. And then I'm like, okay, I applied to it. I got in. It was in Chandigarh. I went there, and that's where I got hands-on experience. Like for 2 weeks, I got like a mini version of IAAC.
Nice.
We did everything. We did fabrication, we did prototyping, we had laser, CNC, 3D, everything. They taught us introductory of everything, like what we do in first
And
month.
this college is equipped for all of this.
Yeah, it's one of the university in Punjab, in Chandigarh.
Which college is that?
I can't recall the name, but it was really good.
Okay.
They had everything, and I was questioning, why don't we have a basic 3D printer in university?
Yeah.
Or a basic laser cutter. Because
Exactly.
this could help students make their models faster rather than using blade and cutting, which wastes so much time. Send the file, get it laser cut, then make the model.
Right.
Because even laser cutting and making a model is a strategy. You can't just have a file exploded and then send it.
Right.
You need to plan for it. Right? So that's what I learned over there. I'm like, how do you plan for fabrication? How do you break your file and then plan for assembly of the file?
Right.
Because we aren't taught to make assemblies. We're just like, okay, you make a clay
I don't
model,
think we
paper
are taught to
model.
make in general.
Yeah, I think
We are
model
taught to
making.
design and sketch, but final production, nobody really.
Yeah, even the final models, right, in
Yeah.
architecture, it would be like paper models, or someone
Mm.
would use sunboard, foam board, and all of these, right? Very cool. Like some of my classmates have made amazing models.
Right.
But if I wanted to make a curved geometry,
Mm.
there's no way I can bend the foam board in two directions and get the geometry,
Correct.
right? Because I wanted like a dual curvature, which is impossible.
Right.
So I'm like, should I make it with clay? And that's not the best finish, right? Then I looked at 3D printing. Back then, 3D print for printing a small piece was 5,000 rupees.
Yeah.
And that's very expensive for an architecture student who's already spending so much to get the final prints of the project.
Yeah.
So I was more curious to understanding how does this work.
Mm.
When I sent my 3D printing file, they said it won't print. I asked why. Because I just sent a 3D model that I modeled a shell.
Yeah.
It's a single,
Correct.
it needs thickness. I didn't know. So they're like, we can't do this. So I sent whatever thickness I thought was right, like a wall, right? I sent it. They're like, oh, it'll cost you 5,000 rupees. I'm like, just for a small model? They're like, yeah. Then I got even more curious into this. I'm like, oh, so if this is what it is, then what more can I do?
Mm.
And that's how my kind of journey towards IA kind of started.
That's very interesting. Mine was, I just stumbled upon IAAC and I was like, okay, this sounds really interesting, and what I'm doing here doesn't make sense to me. They were doing what, interior design and those same residential buildings I was doing with the architects. And somehow it never resonated with me. Like, I don't feel this is who I am as an architect, and I need to explore. And of course, Zaha and all of these people are really, I mean, you look up to them since you're starting your journey. And I was like, okay, I don't know. And then I stumbled upon Nayak and I saw their work and I was like, okay, I think this is it. And I started learning Rhino and Grasshopper from like after going there.
Uh,
And that's scary.
a lot of students, even in my batch, unfortunately didn't know, haven't opened Rhino ever in their life, right?
Yeah.
They installed it for the
You
first time
shouldn't
there.
do that.
Yeah, that's actually not the best way to go
Yeah, you
about
should
it.
definitely explore before going there and also understand what's your stand on it as in which direction, at least like a basic idea, right? Do research. Don't be like me. So
But at
yeah.
least everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah. So I went there and it was extremely intimidating because first of all, Rhino and Grasshopper as softwares are really, I mean, I won't call them difficult now, but at that point, because you have to learn so many things
Yeah.
at the same time, you're also learning how to do a good presentation because if you see how the presentations around you are so professional and everything you're getting challenged. So at least if you know Rhino and Grasshopper, you're on a little better place, right? Like at least you're exploring your design. Right now, I was just exploring softwares. For I think 6 months, I was just understanding software
Yeah.
in IAC. And I was like, I'm never going to design.
It took me one full year to work with groups and teammates to understand what I would really want to do.
Yeah.
But my actual growth of computational design came in the second year
Same.
because I had to do everything by myself.
Yeah.
And that's just not computational design. I had to make my own presentation.
Yeah.
So I had to pick up InDesign. I had to make After Effects videos,
Yes.
right? Premiere Pro videos.
Yeah.
So I think second year for me,
Editing, lighting,
Everything.
documenting.
documentation, right?
Documentation
All
is
of
such
this.
a big part of the projects,
Yep.
which we never do here. I mean, we have taken pictures, yes, but the way we document it over there, your background has to be right, the lighting has to be perfect, the videos have to be made in a certain way. I mean, there were classes just to make videos,
Yeah.
which is
The standard's quite high and it's good.
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
think the standard's getting even better every year as we go in IIT,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And even the students, when they kind of get out, the skills that they already have, it's amazing. That's something I took back. The amount of skills that I got in IAC was insane.
I think working parallelly on multiple platforms is what I really loved, or like what they taught me for sure. That you cannot just be good at one thing and say, okay, this is it. It doesn't work like that. And also, the other part is the collaboration thing which you're talking, and I think that actually changing in our age, right? People want to collaborate, and they know their plus point or like what they are adding to the game. Still not there yet, I would say, in India, but still pushing. I think
Yeah.
maybe like, yeah, our age people, yes, definitely. So we learned a lot about automation, right, in IAC, and you're practicing the same thing in your company which you're putting there. Could you elaborate about like what you guys do as a company, and then broadly about like what you're into right now?
Sure. So LAIA stands for Landscape Architecture, Infrastructures and its Applications.
Oh,
It's a research lab, an observatory, and a venture builder. And we focus on urban infrastructures, but we're designing for the future. So in the research lab, we have several verticals, right? We have 6 verticals.
okay.
We focus on coastal resiliency, last mile logistics. We have smart cities. We have automation, and we have design,
Okay.
right? And in observatory, it's more of like a one-stop solution that we're trying to create, wherein you have data from different data sets around the world, and people can come on the platform and then make informed decisions based on their geographical location, or if they want to look at some other region, they can get the data and then make generate reports.
Okay.
And venture builder is we want to help different companies, different smaller companies to build and launch their own product. Right? So this is the essence of LAIA.
And you're working, you have your own startup which you're also getting to India. I think you're starting from Hyderabad. What is that? What is the project about?
So that company, it's called LAIA Innovation. It is a sub company of LAIA STEM,
Okay.
right? It's all connected.
Okay.
And right now we are focusing on an automated delivery system.
Okay.
Right? It's a last mile delivery vertical of ours, which we're pushing. Right? We've been working on this for the past 4 years. And then now we have reached a point where we are going to build a proof of concept, which we're already building in Bangalore. And this system is basically an automated system to deliver your packages of your online food, your e-commerce, your quick commerce, your Amazon packages, your clothing, your groceries.
Give me an example of like how this
Now,
works.
for example, let's say you live in a gated community, right? Now, in your gated community, every time you order from Zomato in India, the journey of the package is the order is sent to the vendor. Let's say it's a restaurant. They get the order, they prep the order, while Zomato assigns an executive
Okay.
to pick the order and deliver it to your doorstep.
Correct.
Right? That's not the point we are solving right now. That's in the future. But from your main gate until your apartment, until your unit, is where we are tackling. Now, the current scenario is you have a approval that you need to give for someone entering your locality, right? So they come up, they go to your apartment, they deliver the package, and then you don't care about it. They go wherever they want, and then they leave the apartment, right? Now, what this also brings in is invasion of privacy. There's a safety risk, and there is safety in terms of someone can come in and then they can go elsewhere in the locality,
Right.
maybe there are children playing, there's an event happening, and then they just go be part of it. I'm not saying that they do, but then there's a risk factor involved.
Right.
And what we are trying to do is, at the gate itself, we want to cut these people. You don't allow any unknown into your locality, right? I think as a parent or as a someone who has a younger sibling, I would always wonder if the kids are safe, or if someone outside is talking to someone I know, right? They're an unknown person. If there's an older person at home, there's a easy way that someone can push themselves into the house, right?
Right.
So theft can happen. Secure packages. What happens is you don't know who's touching what, right? So now, what we are providing a solution is that from your main gate until your house, you'll have a network that's like a duct and a vertical elevator, which will be connected to your house.
Right.
It would be probably in your kitchen or your utility. We call this a personal delivery unit.
Nice.
So through this, from your main gate, the package will come to you.
Okay.
But what this also does is that you can also send packages elsewhere. It can be connected to different services. These days, every residential complex has a small supermarket within. But now if you have to go to the supermarket, you need to get down and pick up stuff. That's why people end up ordering on Zepto or
Right.
Blinkit on Swiggy Instamart.
Right.
But what if they had connection to the network? So you just order to them and then they send it to you.
Correct. So we are basically eliminating this other person who's
Yeah.
coming into the whole equation, which is not required.
Exactly.
Right.
But it's safer, right? But we're also trying to design communities that become safer in the future.
Right.
The way we see it is that a lot of people are able to order online because of the internet penetration and the ability to expend money, right? In India, especially. And the demand for last mile is increasing. By 2030, it's going to be 30% more traffic added to the streets. I think that's the bigger challenge that which we want to tackle eventually, right?
Correct.
Have an underground network of tunnels throughout the city. But for now, imagine the increase in the number of unknowns coming into your delivery, into your community. So now, the number of unknowns maybe in 2024 are 50 a day, but in 2030 are probably 150 or 200. That's only a day, right? Imagine for a month, for a year. So we want to design for that. So to have a system now that takes care of that.
Right. I think I have so many questions. One being from architecture point of view of like how do you solve the duct system which needs to be done? It cannot be done before. I mean, it needs to be pre-planned before the building is getting up and working, and it's extremely interesting to think of that, right? Like I think you were talking about how MEP systems will have this also integrated in that. We never thought of MEP being the way it is right now. So this is how the future is going to be.
Yeah. The way we approach this is we come in when you are designing it. Because then we can provide the best solution to you. But if we come in after the design is done, then the solution also gets constrained accordingly. Because then we can't manipulate the flow plan. Then we can't manipulate the cores of the buildings, right? So for us, we would need to work with MEP consultants.
Right.
We would have to work with the BIM model of the entire development, right? And we would also have to work with the design team. So when we come in, we have to talk to the rest of the teams who are
Right.
working on this project.
Right.
And then we have our own vendors who come in and help us build this.
I'm sure you would have spoken to a lot of people about this, right? And architects including. How's the reaction you're getting?
I think it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
So some of them see it as an opportunity to have a USP as their armory of
Right.
solutions that they provide. Some of them are very concerned about the expense, the fact that it doesn't exist anywhere in the world, right? Or the question is always about, hey, has it been built anywhere? And when I say no, they're like, oh, then it's hard.
I
But
understand.
that's always a starting problem, right? When you try to build something new, there's always you're gonna get pushback. But the idea is to speak with the right people. There are some people who are super interested. Some people align, right? Like the people we speak with, they see the potential of the project and then they want to expose us to more of their other projects, because it's not just a value that we are adding for them, but they're adding value to their clients and the developers and the builders, because they get more square feet to sell. They can add more price for their single unit cost, right? So it's things like these.
Do you also think there are questions of like you're gonna reduce like number of laborers getting involved into this, like people who are getting paid for delivering and stuff, because a lot of people are employed for this sector, right?
Yeah, we've
Are
always
you
had
like
this
a threat to
question.
them?
See, the way I see it is, the idea is to make things safer and secure, right? The more people that are on the roads, the more they're putting their lives at risk. Right? Anything can happen. So when we are looking at a citywide network, you would remove 80% of the delivery drivers, right? I get it. It's a big market and a lot of people would be angry. But the thing is, you need those people to maintain the network. You need a set of warehouses that needs to be taken care of, right? Which is a safe and controlled setting.
Yeah.
So we would also create jobs in different sectors along the network, for the network, to build it, to
Right.
construct it, to implement it, to service it. So we are constantly looking at how we can add more jobs. We are already creating so many jobs with the network. The next step is to understand how we can train these delivery executives to integrate them in our system. So that would eventually happen. But for now, while we are looking at gated communities, we are not really taking away jobs. In fact, we are adding more because there would be a staff that will have for the gated community. There'll be a manager, there'll be someone who is taking care of the service on site all the time, right? Someone who has to make the entire system, make the units, make the robots.
Now, again, like going back to we being architects, how do you think you as an architect have like a very different kind of perspective towards the whole problem you are solving right now? Because this is not something which an architect is dealing with every day, right? You're designing, but you're not designing systems like these.
Yeah.
So how is it better for you to be a part of this? And how did you approach the problem differently?
I think there's a bifold answer to this. One is me being an architect gives me a full understanding of what the design is. So I can also make suggestions to the architect saying, hey, maybe it could be elsewhere rather than this. So we can go deep into the design rather than just saying, this is the size of shaft I need and place it wherever you can. So we can kind of aid and help the architects as well. And as an urban planner, we look at this as a citywide problem, right? Traffic's going to increase. It's going to take you longer to reach point A to point B. More people are going to come to cities, right? As the population increases, then more vehicles are going to come onto the streets. So the real estate for roads is limited, but the people coming on the roads are increasing. So it is going to create a clog. Right? We are in Bangalore. It's notoriously known for its traffic.
Correct.
Right? But now, if you remove the 30% traffic of delivery drivers, it's not like the traffic solution is solved, but then you have taken care of 30%, right? Rest all, maybe you have to do carpooling or something like that, but that's not something we are tackling. We want to focus on the last mile market.
Right.
Also, when we look at, for example, Zepto, right? They have dark stores all over the city. Now, when a delivery driver is assigned to a dark store to deliver it, he's within his own area, right? Let's say it's a 5 kilometer, 10 kilometer radius or so. Now, to allocate these warehouses where they are to be placed, we use computational tools, right? But at the city level. So now it's much bigger scale. So we know exactly where it should be and what is the traffic impact of this particular warehouse or dark store as opposed to something else. Right. So now then we start planning different strategies accordingly. Maybe this has to be a smaller one so that the intensity and the load that comes onto this in terms of delivery is not that high. But then whereas a city center, we would need more.
So you're using these computational tools, which is basically Grasshopper and the components which come with it to understand how the traffic flow is happening in the city and how the network itself is spread out.
Yep.
Right. Okay, now let's just get back to IAAC again because we love IAAC. And if at all, because I mean, you're doing incredible stuff, and I'm sure people want to get into a field like this after this, hopefully. How do you think, how do you not think, like, how did you get into IAAC first? And then how do you think people should prepare for IAAC?
The way I got into IAAC is a very interesting story. So I did a summer school, right, in Chandigarh with IAAC. And after the summer school, that's where I met someone working with IAAC. And they suggested that, hey, if someone wants to join this year, the applications are still open. You can speak with us and we can help you, right? So I came back from Chandigarh and I thought about it. It was, I think, in the month of July, and IAAC starts in September. I needed to get my visa done, get the funds for the course, right? And I was toying with the idea about, should I go this year or should I go next year? Then I'm like, you know what, let's just go this year. And then I started speaking with the connection that I made there. And he kind of spoke with the admissions department then. So I think that's how I got into IAAC, right? But after IAAC, I think something very interesting is the different ways you can go. right? What I did was I did a internship during my second year, and for the internship, uh, I had to create a portfolio and I had to have a round of interviews with the architect, with the team. I met them in Barcelona before flying out to India for a visit. And while I was in India, I kind of made my portfolio. I sent my portfolio. I spoke with the architect, and they said it's fine. We had a very long discussion about, can we look at your projects? What did you really do in your projects, and what was the reason behind your projects and your involvement? I think they like the way I approach things, so they offered me an internship. I started in October, and October until now, right? So the first year was an internship, and then I got on board as a full-time employee, and then I started growing in the company. I took on more and more responsibilities. I think that's where I like what IAC gave me. It gives you so much in your tool set that when you join a company, you become a one-man show.
Yeah.
You can do the work of 5, 6 people. It might take a bit longer, but then now that I'm hiring people, and if I see someone from IAC, I would actually give it a shot, because I know this person can make videos, really good drawings, can have presentations, can actually has a good thought process and problem solving ability, and has structured workflow, right? So that's what it gave me. And then I started getting more and more into their projects. They started exposing me more because we started building the trust. And I started off as an intern. Now I'm the CTO of the company. Right? It's been a good journey. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that IAC gave me to learn,
Right.
and also what my co-founders and partners gave me
Right.
in terms of work, in terms of helping with the permits, right? Work permits very difficult to get, so they helped me with the work permit, and then yeah, just building the relationship, getting me more involved in the business, how things go, because something that we don't really learn is the business acumen, right? And that's something so important, because if you want to sell a project, it's not just a design. You need to sell the numbers, you need to sell the sales, you need to sell the strategy. How are you going to make money out of it? Right? You also need to know about it.
Right.
It's not just a service that you offer. You can do it, but that's just limiting, right? But with this number of skills that you have from IAC, it's so important for you to be able to sell yourself and market yourself really well. So that's important. That's what I learned.
Right. So, I mean, for me, it's the same. I think I kind of got so much, like the skill set was improved by, I don't know, multiple folds, right? And then I think at some point I got confused of like, where do I want to
Yeah.
head towards also?
Happens, yeah.
That also happens. Extremely confused and like, what do I want to explore? But I think once you do the thesis, the second year, it actually streamlines your, um, I think, whatever you want to get into the final thing. But again, like coming out, I'm doing like very different exploration of myself, like whatever I should be doing. But yeah, the question that how do you get into IAC? Great portfolio. You need to have IELTS score and
IELTS
what
is not
else?
necessary.
No, you need IELTS.
When I did,
No,
it wasn't a
no.
requirement.
Yeah, for us it was.
Really?
Yeah. You need
Okay, it's not
IELTS.
a
Basic score. Like you
Spanish.
don't
It's
need
a
to get like some 9 or 10 or anything, but basic score. That's just to get into the school. Letter of recommendations is
yeah.
what you need. I think 3 of them.
I had taken it from my architects where I
Yeah.
did internships at.
Yeah. So better like get it from where you
Work.
have worked
And
and
your
your university.
Yeah.
You
The
get it from the dean
Yeah.
and that's it.
Or the director.
Yeah.
Anybody helps. Yeah.
And that should be good. Yeah, and IAC does not give a guarantee that you'll be getting a job.
Yeah.
That like the way you struggled and you went got an internship and then you had to push yourself, and that's how the whole journey will be. You will have to go out, learn, understand what you want to do, and then get to it.
Yeah, because when I was interning, I did Monday to Friday IAC and Saturday, Sunday internship. Right? So all of this comes at a cost.
Yeah,
It comes at a cost of having a social life.
yeah,
It comes at a cost of, should I do this or should I go do something else or should I
Yeah.
just take a nap? And you're in Barcelona. It's one of the best cities in the world. It's very tempting to
Yeah.
leave and go enjoy a Saturday swim rather than go to an office and work, right, the entire
Yeah.
day. So I think eventually all of this paid off for me, and it's still paying off, right? I don't say it's already done.
Yeah.
I'm still getting started,
Correct.
but it does take some amount of like resilience and a lot of luck, right? I didn't get into the job I have just by being good at it.
Hmm.
I really gave a lot to luck because I was in the right place at the right time.
But you are also an extremely hard worker, is what I've seen. Like you
Yeah, but
really
luck
put
also
yourself.
plays a
Yeah,
big thing,
definitely.
right?
I agree. I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Pratik. It was really nice to have you here. It's inspiring to see your journey. And yeah, I'll push myself seeing how you're doing.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me. It's been great.